What if I told you that the next global superpower might not be decided on Earth, but on the Moon? Look closely at those faint lines in the lunar dust. They are not shadows. They are not cracks. They are human tracks. They were left there in 1972 during Apollo 17, the last time astronauts walked on the Moon. More than 50 years have passed, and no human has returned. We went to the Moon with less computing power than the smartphone in your pocket. And then we stopped. Why? Why did humanity achieve something so extraordinary and then walk away? And why is the world suddenly racing back? To understand what's happening today, we need to go back to the beginning. The first space race in the 1960s was not really about space. It was about dominance. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in the Cold War. Two systems, two ideologies. The Soviet Union struck first. Sputnik became the first artificial satellite. Then came the first animal in orbit. Then Yuri Gagarin, the first human to circle the Earth. The world watched as America appeared to fall behind. That was unacceptable. So the United States made a bold promise: land a man on the Moon before the decade was over. In 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. 12 astronauts would eventually walk on the Moon between 1969 and 1972. And then, without warning, it ended. No permanent base, no long-term presence, no follow-up expansion, just silence. The reason was not technological failure. It was political reality. The Apollo program cost enormous sums of money. Once the United States had beaten the Soviet Union to the Moon, the political urgency faded. Public excitement declined. Priorities shifted towards satellites, space shuttles, and eventually the International Space Station. The Moon had served its purpose. But here's the part most people miss. We did not abandon the Moon because it was unimportant. We abandoned it because the competition was over. Now the competition is back. For decades, the lunar surface remained untouched by humans. But quietly, another nation was preparing. In 2013, China successfully landed an unmanned spacecraft on the Moon. No country had done that since the 1970s. It was not a symbolic gesture, it was a strategic signal. Chinese officials openly stated that lunar exploration reflects a nation's comprehensive strength. In other words, it reflects power. Suddenly, the Moon was no longer history. It was opportunity. The United States responded with a new program called Artemis. The goal is not just to land astronauts again, but to establish a sustainable presence. This is not Apollo repeated. The landing site has shifted from the equator to the Moon's south pole. Why the South Pole? Because of hidden ice. Water changes everything. Water supports human life. It can be purified for drinking. It can be split into oxygen. And when separated into hydrogen and oxygen, it becomes rocket fuel. Think about the implications. Right now, every kilogram of fuel must be launched from Earth at enormous cost. If fuel can be produced on the Moon would become a refueling station, a gateway for missions to Mars and beyond. Whoever controls the gateway controls access to deeper space. And this is where the stakes rise. There is also the possibility of helium-3 embedded in lunar soil. Scientists believe it could fuel fusion reactors. Fusion energy is cleaner and potentially far more powerful than current nuclear fission. On Earth, it is extremely rare. If fusion becomes commercially viable, helium-3 could become incredibly valuable. But extracting it would not be simple. Massive equipment would need to be transported across space. Lunar soil would need to be mined and processed. The benefits are uncertain. The costs would be enormous. Yet nations are preparing anyway. Why? Because the potential reward could reshape global energy and influence. Now consider another question. We had less advanced technology in the 1960s, so why is progress slower today? In the Apollo era, risk tolerance was far greater. Astronauts accepted dangers that modern standards would never permit. Today, safety requirements are stricter. Every failure is scrutinized publicly. Every delay becomes political. The new lunar architecture is also far more complex. NASA's Space Launch System, commercial lunar landers. This is not one rocket and one landing. It is an ecosystem. And ecosystems take time to build. Meanwhile, China has announced plans to send humans to the Moon before 2030. Officially, Chinese leaders say it is not a race, but simultaneous ambition creates competition. Two coalitions are forming. The United States leads the Artemis Accords, joined by dozens of nations. China is leading the development of an international lunar research station in partnership with Russia. Two frameworks, two visions, two approaches to governing activity beyond Earth. And here's the critical detail. The Moon is roughly the size of Africa, but only certain regions contain accessible water in permanently shadowed craters. If one nation establishes infrastructure first in those areas, it gains practical influence. Space treaties state no country can claim ownership. But infrastructure shapes access, and access shapes power. The first space race was about planting a flag and leaving footprints. This one is about building capacity, mining operations, fuel production, long-term habitats, communication networks, permanent presence. The footprints from Apollo 17 are still there, preserved in dust that has not moved for 50 years. Soon, new tracks may join them. But this time, humanity may not be visiting, it may be settling. The moon is no longer a trophy, it is strategic terrain. And whoever builds first may shape the future of space and the balance of power on Earth. The race has already begun. The question is not who lands first, the question is who stays.